All right, episode 2 of Ferg's Footy Fanfare. Two cousins isolated right now due to coronavirus, and we are right now talking about what's going on in the AFL. Plenty of recent news coming out in not even the last 24 hours, and I'd like to welcome Jay.
How you going, Ned? Good to hear from you again. It's been a big week. It's been plenty of things on topic, so I reckon that we just dive straight in, get started on it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, where do we start though first? That's the thing.
I reckon the best thing to start about would be the hubs and the resumption of footy. You know, it's been quite a talking point, obviously, throughout the past week. I've heard in particular that they want to get the training date started on May 18. That's the date that they're looking optimistic for. I think pretty obviously it's going to rely a lot on what happens in Victoria in May 11 in terms of
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
restrictions will be eased to an extent where groups and teams can train together. Other than that, then considering from what I've heard and from reading that I've been able to do on the AFL website, they plan to get the season started within 3 weeks of the May 18 date that they resume training. So if that's the case, then footy's just over a month away, and that's not too long at all.
Yeah, absolutely unreal. Just listening to recent news with the whole Western Australian sides, Western Australian government will not lift any rules for sides coming into Western Australia for a football hub. So Western Australia is pretty much out of the equation.
Okay, yeah. It'll be interesting to see whether after this news the hub kind of topic gains any more traction in a kind of a quick fix to get it back on board ASAP. I still think that there's a lot of points that it is a positive for a lot of clubs and for people in general. But maybe now with the season so close to looking to get back to some form of normality, it might just be a case of holding out for the next month and two until we're able to start playing again. But it will be interesting. I know that you were talking about the positives that this could have for the WA teams.
Yeah, more exposure to the MCG. Ross Lyon mentioned that West Coast being a very front runner for the premiership. More exposure to the MCG. MCG's got a contract to the grand final for till what, 2056 or
it's
something.
It's something crazy like that. Yeah, a long time.
More MCG exposure they get will obviously just do them better. And Fremantle as well, being a young up-and-coming side, probably aspiring to play finals within the next 5 years. I think they'll, if they can get more MCG exposure to their young list that they've got coming through now, it's only going to reap benefits for them if they have to come finals time against the Victorian side.
Absolutely. Do you think the season was to occur in such a quick fashion in terms of having 17 rounds maybe within 15 weeks or so, do you reckon that could really hinder their longevity throughout the season in terms of being fit for that long, or with the constant travelling?
Well, I think generally the Perth sides are quite fit. Obviously, with the climate and all that, probably going to change now because we're going to have, a couple of week pre-season before this whole, hopefully, whatever eventuates, they'll have a short pre-season. But generally, the Perth-based sides are quite fit because of, obviously, the more extreme climate that they endure during pre-season. So, it'd be interesting to see. I don't know what's going on.
I feel
obviously,
Sorry.
Obviously, looking at a post yesterday on Rory Sloane's Instagram timeline, Taylor Walker's been in quite a good paddock.
Yeah, I did see some of that bit of banter.
He's gonna have to endure quite a big preseason. I don't know if he was, just exhaling on his breath or something, but he did look like he's there's been a good feed.
It's funny that you do mention that, because I think getting back started into the season, it's really going to show the professionalism of teams and players who was able to look after themselves during this period to a point where they're as close to match fitness as possible.
That's right. You've only got, 2 to 3 weeks of pre-season. I think NRL doing 3 weeks. I don't know what the AFL are going to look at. I think they're looking at 2 to 3 weeks as well.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it will make life a lot easier if you're already in, quite fit, pristine condition right now, because, your pre-season is not going to be as enduring and as, so much of a strain on you.
Yeah, by all means. I guess that leads into the next thing that we're going to talk about, and kind of breaking news, considering we'd, heard this no longer than 6 hours ago about the Adelaide Football Club. You want to recap us on what's happened there, Ned?
Yeah, so from what I've heard, I heard this breaking on 3AW on the way home. Adelaide, I believe they're all interstate players they brought back into quarantine. They've been based at a resort on the Barossa Valley with a golf course present the resort. And it seems that they have undergone a training program supposedly involving 16 players, which obviously we heard with the Western Australian sides as they eased restrictions that they could not participate in groups of 10, which is what was laid out by their government, that groups of 10 could gather, but AFL said no because of an unfair advantage, and it seems that Adelaide have broken this ruling from the AFL. So I think we'll probably hear news in the next up-and-coming days about what happens, but yeah, it's pretty much not much more to that than that.
Yeah, I think there's, quite poor form in terms of trying to take an advantage that just hasn't been given to them. They've had no right to take it. In saying that, one could argue that, it's been quite unlucky for them with the ease of restrictions to not be able to train in groups. But to try and maintain some kind of equality, if that's the rules that everyone has to abide by, then that's the rules everyone has to abide by.
Well, that's the thing. The rules were clearly stated, I think on Monday or something, about the Western Australian sides. And I believe that this may have been organised, that they're all organised fitness regimes and all that, but I don't know if that was involving in being a whole group thing or not. So,
yeah. Now, we know that over the past couple of years as well with Adelaide, they've tended to take this shift in culture change. They're looking to change the way that they approach things. Do you think this is going to have an impact on, the foreseen changes that they've tried to make?
I think personally this is a maybe more of an administrative issue. I don't know, if it's culture or anything, but I think it's more of an administrative mistake that they've allowed this to happen. That's how I feel. But I feel right now, and I think being biased, obviously, I think since the 2017 grand final, they have just been an absolute shambles of a football club.
Yeah, I agree. And both you and I were speaking about it last week. We had them in the bottom 3 of our ladder predictions. They're going to face a lot of criticism for what they've done. I know that there was a league spokesperson who labelled it, they would be furious if it were true. And I think that the AFL as an organisation would feel the same kind of emotions if that were the case.
Yeah. So I feel that's probably all there is to there. Obviously, other news, which is a question that I was speaking to you before that I was going to pose to you during this. Obviously, we all know about Kane Corns. Likes to keep himself relevant. Sometimes I do agree with him. Sometimes I don't. I understand everyone has an opinion. But one big talking point was him about Alex Jezelenko's mark in, I can't remember what year, in the grand final, the Jezelenko You Beauty. Yep. And he labelled that mark as overrated and wouldn't even make the top 50 marks of all time. How do you sit with that?
Look, I at the very best of times struggle to agree with what Kane Corn says. Like you said, I think he just talks to keep himself relevant. He's quite flamboyant. I think he does it just to get likes, a bit of a publicity stunt. Considering the events that happened, grand final, big stage, big time player, to say that that's not in the top 50 marks is pretty disrespectful, and I'm pretty sure that's what Alex Jezelenko's daughter ended up roasting him about as well. And I know that Eddie Maguire came out in response as well, kind of backing up those claims. And I'll see if I can find the quotes. But yeah, he had quite a go at him for saying such things.
And I actually was on Facebook last night, and yesterday, unfortunately for my Tigers, was a game that I actually went to. Richmond got absolutely pants by Geelong in 2007 at Etihad Stadium.
Yeah,
I think it was 157 points or something like that. And I did see Kane Corns actually directly comment on that on Facebook saying, and I thought 119 points was bad. But I thought considering Richmond were quite a struggling outfit back in those days, and later on that year, Port go on to lose by 119 points in a grand final. I think I'd rather lose by 157 points in a regular season game compared to a grand final.
Absolutely. I haven't done any research to back this up, but that would almost have to be the most embarrassing and disappointing loss in a grand final of all time.
Well,
in terms of the sheer velocity of it, Geelong were always known as a team that had struggled. They'd made something ridiculous, like 7 grand finals in the previous 20 years and had been unable to win. They were there for the taking, and they were absolutely slaughtered, Port Adelaide.
But also, Port Adelaide also beat Geelong in Geelong, I think, in about the second last or last round.
Yeah, Dominic Cassisi.
Yeah, and so Port were more than capable, and I don't know what happened, but I think if you're a team, and they were obviously going to be competitive enough to deal with Geelong on that day, and he's come out and said something stupid like that, and they've had their pants pulled down in a game that they probably, I don't know how well they were backed, but they could have been a good chance. Whereas we were never a chance against Geelong. So,
no, that's exactly right. Yeah. I think he needs to sometimes just sit down and think about it, but that's not what he's paid to do. He's paid to make obscene comments and get likes on news articles.
That's right. So other news I also listened to today on 3AW, driver Tom Elliott. Shout out to Tom Elliott. He's a smart man. Tasmanian government are willing to put $7 million per annum to support an AFL team in Tasmania, which I think is a smart option. And I've spoken to this with my father a lot. And he reckons that if Tasmania to have a team, it's got to be Tasmanian government backed.
Yep.
Which I think is a good thing. And looking right now, AFL, I'm not sure what it is for GWS, but I know definitely for the Gold Coast Suns, they pump 20 to 25 million per annum. So if that means that AFL, I don't know if the AFL have to put any money into them, but if the AFL only has to put in 10 million per annum, I mean, surely that's a logical solution, considering, I don't know if they're to fold the Gold Coast or keep the Gold Coast, but the AFL aren't really forking that much out for a team in Tasmania. They also reckon that they could get up to nearly 60,000 members.
Right. Wow.
Which would be a great money spinner.
Yeah.
So
I think you need to look at it logically in terms of, I think it's almost a certainty that within the next 5 to 10 years max, there's going to be a team in Tasmania.
Well,
and
the
I
plan
think
from
that
the
the
Tasmanian
evidence,
government, the plan from Tasmanian government is a 2025 expectation
right,
to have a site
yeah.
based
And
in
I think
Tasmania.
from that expectation, there's also, and this is evidence-backed, that if teams struggle financially, the AFL is more than happy to dip in as long as they're doing the right things to try and accept this. And we've seen it with Gold Coast. I mean, I guess that's what all the talk is about and the debates over whether, and certain Victorian teams like North and St Kilda should get folded in terms for a team that could probably, start fresh and to a higher standard.
Yeah.
I think that it's all just to a point where it's going to happen sooner or later. It's great that they've received government backing, and that will assist them heaps. Yeah.
It's got to absolutely happen, I think. And the thing is, you look, and also what they had a man from Tasmania speaking. I can't actually recall who it was, But you look at all the games that are played down in Tasmania, and they play all the games that would probably make a loss if they were to be played in Victoria. For example, Hawthorn, Gold Coast, North Melbourne, Fremantle. It's those sort of games that they wouldn't generate much of a crowd in Victoria. So, we'll send it down to Tasmania. The Tasmanian people will come watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess just it starts to become a bit of an in-house thing in terms of where you're going to base the team, whether you're going to have them shifting from Launceston and Hobart.
So what this person stated would be that they would play 6 home games in Launceston, 5 home games in Hobart, and have the club headquartered in Hobart.
Okay, right.
That's what they were saying, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that it's great that they're willing to hop on board, and I think it's just a matter of time before things start swinging in the right direction, and you're going to see a Tasmanian football team.
I think tourism would be absolutely unreal. I mean, you look at what I like about the Gold Coast and the AFL is the tourism aspect, that you can go up and go watch your team play and have a holiday on the Gold Coast. But for Tasmania, how much cheaper it is, considering from Melbourne it's only a 1-hour flight, and a lot cheaper than the Gold Coast. If St Kilda were to, in your case, if St Kilda were to play a game down in Tasmania against Tasmania, it'd nearly draw you to go, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you could almost make a weekend out of it. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the tourism aspect would be very great. I don't know if Richmond were to play against Tasmania and Tasmania, I'd try and make an effort to go down and watch.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very good.
No, that's it. That's exactly right. All right, Nettie. So we've told each other to do our homework over the last week, and we have decided to come up with our top 20 players currently.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I know that I had a fair bit of trouble. Top 5, I think, everyone's kind of in the same area with top 5. A couple of people might throw in a bit of a, out there suggestion. But once you start going from 6 to 20, I reckon I could have had another extra 10 players that are pretty lucky to miss out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Obviously there's so many good players, but it was quite hard actually once I started getting to about, maybe even, 15 to 20.
Yep.
Yeah. But you can kick off with your first 5?
All right. So from 20 to 15. So this is current form as well. Yep. Not based on their career. Yeah.
So we'll go 20 to 16. That's the first 5.
All right. Number 20, I've got Andrew Gaff from West Coast. I have number 19, Darcy Moore from Collingwood. Number 18, I have Elliot Yeo from West Coast. Number 17, I have Lance Franklin. And number 16, I have Scott Pendlebury.
Yeah, nice. Going from my 20 to 16, I've got Josh Kennedy from Sydney. Tom Lynch from Richmond.
Yep.
Stephen Coniglio from the Giants. And then 17, I've got Jeremy Cameron from the Giants. And then number 16, I've got Jordan De Goey.
Jordan De Goey. Yeah, see, now I will exclaimer here, a little bit of a spoiler. I don't have De Goey in my top 20. I don't.
Wow.
I know.
See,
and I'm a huge De Goey fan as well. I reckon that if the talks about St Kilda throwing a contract at him, I reckon they should throw the kitchen sink at him.
Yeah. In rebuttal to that, I actually don't have Lance Franklin in my top 20.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I mean, you can kind of start to see it's the demise of his career. Struggling to get out on the park a bit more, picking up calf, which is, generically known.
I mean, if we're talking the last decade, he's probably, in your 1 to 5 category.
Yeah.
I just feel right now he's just not the buddy that he was 5 years ago.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. The only reason that I've still got him there is because I reckon he's one of those people that can still grab the game, maybe just in smaller patches. But he is someone that's still a game changer. So that was my reasoning behind it.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair enough.
Rightio. So from 15 to 11 now. So in this little spiel, I go into a bit of a GWS frenzy. So at number 15, I've got Stephen Coniglio. Number 14, I've got Toby Green. And number 13, I've got Lockie Whitfield. So, and that's not all my GWS players, but that is in this little patch. Number 12, I've got Jeremy McGovern, who, as a matter of fact, is my highest defender. He's my number 1 ranked defender.
Yeah, I believe he's mine as well.
And then at number 11, I have Tim Kelly, who I think will create a huge boost for West Coast, which would seem pretty unlikely considering the midfield that they've already got. You wouldn't think it could get much better.
It's only got to get better, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So in that 10 players, I think I've had 3 GWS and 4 West Coast players. Starting to sound like my old man, who is an avid West Coast sympathiser. He loves pretty much any player that chucks on that blue and yellow.
Yeah. The royal blue and gold, is it?
That's it. Yeah. Always helps you got a bald head as well. He's kind of into that.
Yeah, I haven't found Shannon Hearn into my top 20, unfortunately. But so my 15 to 11, I've gone Dylan Grimes, Jeremy McGovern, Luke Shuey, Scott Pendlebury, and Dion Prestia.
Nice. I'm surprised you didn't have Prestia up there a little bit. He was awesome in round 1. I thought that he was best on ground for you guys.
Yeah. I was speaking to my old man as well last night, and we were talking about who we felt Richmond's second best player was. Obviously, Dustin Martin's going to be number 1, but who number 2 was. And he said Bashar Hooley, which I actually did not mention. And I didn't really think about it much. But I still think Dion Prestia, I think any player that, wins at best and fairest in a premiership season is a very good player.
Absolutely. And he's unbelievably consistent as well. You can count on him week in, week out to, get his 25 touches, be clean with those touches as well. That's what really matters. So that's why, actually, it's a good segue because I've got him in at number 10. Meatball.
Nice.
So number 9, I've got Lockie Neal, Brisbane. Number 8, I've got Max Gawn. Number 7, I've got Jeremy Cameron, who's my highest rated forward. And then number 6, I've got Brodie Grundy, who is my highest rated ruckman. So I think out of the top 5, the generic top 5, the next best player afterwards is Brodie Grundy. In terms of being valuable, I think that although they've got a huge price tag to keep him at Collingwood, I think that it's worth it. And I know that draws other issues around their salary cap and other experienced and highly skilled players. But I feel like that's the right choice they need to make. You can build a team around someone that's as mobile and dominant as he.
So, I've actually got, I think, about 3 of the same in this next category. So, my number 10, I've gone Tom Mitchell from Hawthorn. Max Gawn, Brodie Grundy at 8, Lockie Neal at 7, and then Tim Kelly at number 6.
Yeah, nice. I think that's fair enough as well. You see the year that Tim Kelly had last year, 2nd in the Brownlow or 3rd?
Yeah, it was up there, but
one of those goes to show.
I think that's obviously the spiral that we talked about that Geelong might go down. I think losing Tim Kelly is going to be a massive loss for him. So I can understand why people think Geelong will miss out on finals. I can't see them missing out on finals, but I think Tim Kelly is an absolutely huge loss because I reckon he was probably their most valuable player. Definitely the preliminary final last year. Hey, if there was no Tim Kelly, Geelong probably end up losing the game by,
it's interesting. It would have become a whitewash by the end of it. Absolutely, yeah. I guess that just goes to show, and I know that we touched on it briefly last week, but with a team like Geelong, you've got absolute superstars in it. But you need a reliance on your bottom 6 players as well. And when they're not up to scratch compared to a league standard, then it really does show, especially in tense moments like something like a preliminary final.
Too many holes, yeah.
Yeah. All right, number 5, I have the Bonds. And in my opinion, he's pretty lucky to make it in at number 5. I reckon that he's probably a bit too hyped up at the moment, a bit overvalued. Although in saying that, I think potentially
he's very capable. He's a very capable player.
I 100% agree with that. Number 4, I've got Patrick Cripps. kind of same thing, except he's just a bull. He's an absolute bull. But he never
Yeah.
burns St Kilda, so that's all right. I kind of like him for that. These next two players burn St Kilda every time they play him. We've got Patrick Dangerfield at number 3.
Yeah.
Awesome player, big body, gets in there. Not a huge fan of his off-field antics, but someone's got to be. When you're the president of the Players Association, you've got to be the one that stands up.
Yeah, you got to have a bit of a personality, don't you?
That's right. Yeah, you got to be willing to put in your 2 cents in all kind of situations. And my number 2 is Nathan Fyfe, which means my number 1 is Dustpan Martin. Pretty hard to go past the most influential player in the game. Can take a game by storm in 5 minutes, and that's all he'll need. But he decides to play 4 quarters of good football. It's hard to go past him as number 1, I reckon.
Well, yeah, that's right. I remember. Well, I'll go through my 5, and then I'll talk about what I'm going to talk about. So I've got the same players in a slightly different order. So Marcus Bontempelli, number 5. I've got Patrick Dangerfield, number 4.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Patrick Cripps at number 3, based on his potential. I think he's definitely got a Brownlow or 2 in him in the next coming years. Nat Fyfe at number 2, and then Dustin Martin at number 1. Like what I was going to say is that, can't remember who it was, but it was some media personnel saying if Dustin Martin doesn't have 25 or more touches a game, Richmond don't win. But you've only got to look back to the finals, and this was talking.
I was going to say, that doesn't seem right.
This is ages ago. But now you look at him and the Brisbane game up in Brisbane, I think he would have only had probably no more than 13 disposals, and he kicked 6 goals and wins a game off his own boot pretty much.
No, that's exactly right. And I know that I've had the conversation with a few friends as well, our fellow Saint friends. Who do you put on Dustin Martin when he goes forward? It's all right if he's playing in the midfield. Jack Steele's pretty reliable to, keep him fairly quiet. But it's when he goes forward that he's almost his most destructive.
And the problem is as well is that you've got Jack Rewalt and Tom Lynch up forward. Yeah. So you've got 3 very good quality players, and how many teams have 3 top quality defenders?
Mm-hmm. No
exactly one has 3 top quality defenders.
You are spot on there. So that's our top 20. I think we did pretty well with that. I don't think there's any super big names that either of us missed out. I mean, it's all pretty arguable by the end of it. You can choose whoever you want.
But yeah, I think we're pretty much in the same ballpark, probably besides maybe 3 to 5 players.
Yeah.
Maybe, but yeah, we're quite in the same ballpark.
Yeah. I mean, just going on Andrew Gaff in particular, I can see why a lot of people wouldn't have him in, but when he's playing well, he's especially in that West Coast midfield, it really gives him the ability to be that excellent outside ball user that he can be, really clean both sides. And I hear he's got a pretty good left hand as well, throwing punches.
Well, that's why I had Josh Kennedy at number 20, and I remember going to a Geelong Sydney game a couple of years ago, and Sydney were down. I reckon they were down maybe 4 to 3 goals at 3/4 time, and Joey Kennedy wound back the clock and just played an absolute stellar game and won Sydney the game. And I still reckon that if Sydney would have somehow have gotten up in the 2016 grand final, but obviously the umpires wouldn't have, they had a different say. He definitely would have been best on ground.
Yeah,
he was a very deadly player in that game.
Yeah, it just goes to show that, even in superstar midfields, even at that time, they had McVeigh running around. Even in the early 2010s, you had Goods, McVeigh, Hanbury. You had these kind of players getting around, and yet he constantly stood out and was, their soldier. They're Dion Prestia equivalent. So,
yeah, just that player that gets it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Reliable sort of thing, yeah.
All right, you got anything else that you want to chat about? Any other questions that you've got posed?
All right. Just a late question. I just want a date from you. When do you reckon our grand final will be?
Great question. I'm not too sure what they've what they've been talking about in terms of the 2020 World Cup in the cricket. I'm not too sure whether, because I knew that there was 4 weeks gap in between the grand final being played and the 2020 World Cup being started, which sounds like the end of October.
Well, I think the 2020 World Cup will be extremely lucky to go ahead at this stage.
And if that's the case, then I don't know. I think if you're able to push the AFL season back and maybe have the grand final in late October, perhaps.
That's exactly what I'm thinking as well. I can highly doubt that this T20 World Cup will go ahead. So I think that allows for a late October finish, which I think would not be too bad of a result.
No, I'd take that as well. I reckon a lot of teams would. Do you reckon that's going to have to involve a 17-round season?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it will. I think, even the shorter quarters, might allow us to play, allow 5-game to 6-game turnarounds quite frequently, I think.
That is a good question. Would you prefer to have 1 game a week and 17 rounds in a season? Or would you prefer to have 22 rounds but shorter quarters and less turnover?
Well, my theory has always been towards the fixturing as an even thing, is that you have 18 games this season at this current point in time. So you'd have your play everyone once, then you have your rivalry game, whoever that is, and you play them twice. And then the next year, it's a reverse fixture. So, say if St Kilda were to play Adelaide in Melbourne this year, next year they play them interstate.
Yeah. I think something that hasn't really been brought on, I think that would be more likely to occur as a permanent thing if Tasmania was brought on board. Because essentially you have to think about if only 17 rounds are being played, and that's 5 rounds worth of money that the AFL is missing out on, essentially.
Yeah.
So to bring in an extra team requires an extra round. If you have another team come in, then all of a sudden you're going to have 19, 20 rounds.
Yeah, and I still think potentially, and I was thinking about this week, West Coast have got a 10-year waiting list for a reserve seat.
Wow.
Do we look at trying to include another Perth team, maybe just to get rid of that as well, and obviously another team, another round? It's just depending on whether people are going to want to move from West Coast to another side. That's the only problem I see.
In my opinion, and I can understand why this wouldn't work, I think that you need to really try and equal, make it completely representative. So I think the next team after Tasmania would be logical to try and get some form of Northern Territory team in.
I think, Northern Territory is very in the debate.
It's in a lot of aspects, financially and all that, it's not really the greatest decision, but that way you're representing pretty much every state, every territory besides Canberra. But I feel like that would be the next thing. But even they get GWS down there for a couple of games a year.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, it's good having you again, Neddy. We'll keep this going every week, just trying to find somewhere that we can upload it. So I'll get onto that within the week, make sure that we've got it down pat. And hopefully by the time the season started, we'll be pros with this stuff. We'll be all over it.
Hopefully, yeah. Good to chat with you again. And, let's hope we have more good news coming in the next coming week.
Absolutely. All right, Neddy. Good talk to you, mate.
You too, mate.